Welcome back to part 6 of the Navigating Business Decisions video series, in which I am explaining the results of our survey that I did in collaboration with Kent State University students in Kent, Ohio. I was really privileged to have the chance to work with them to invite business owners in Northeast Ohio to tell us their thoughts about how they make decisions. And this report is a 64-page pretty large report. If you want to read the entire thing or check it out, you can find it at laconteconsulting.com/Ohio-survey. We also have a 2-page summary, which shows just the highlights. But in this series, I wanted to explain more in depth some of the sections in this report that may give you some more context or provide just an easier consumable way to hear how we did this and what we learned. So in this section, we're going to go over some of the risk behaviors and the challenges that we found in the survey results and the answers that folks gave as they answered the survey questions. So there are a lot of challenges, obviously, in running a business. And I think each of us has our own point of view, whether you are a business owner or a leader, whatever your circle of influence is. If you're reading books on leadership and on business ownership and entrepreneurship, there's so much information out there. But I think it's really helpful to get conversations directly with owners instead of trying to guess. That's the reason why I wanted to do this in the first place, was to actually ask real life people what they think about the challenges that they are facing. And when I did this and we gathered the survey results back, it was really fascinating to see some themes come through. So this section is talking about some of the challenges that we found were quite prevalent throughout the respondents' answers. So first of all, economic uncertainty. 57% of the people who responded to our survey said that they were concerned or had challenges with the economic situation that affects their business directly or indirectly. They are having trouble making solid decisions because it's just so unstable, or there are lots of questions about what could be happening. And again, this survey was conducted in fall of 2024. So there was a lot of political uncertainty, and that was affecting the economy, and things might have shifted slightly since then, but there are still some questions and some concerns that we have in many sectors about how that certain challenges could continue. So the impact of that is not just on the market conditions and shifts that might affect the cost of goods, but also the disruptions that could be impacting a business's ability to continue to serve customers, to provide shipping, to find a new customer base. There's so many different impacts that are happening because of that. So according to 57% of our respondents, this is a big concern when it comes to making decisions. So this opportunity is that with a more flexible way to create strategies, there is more opportunity to become responsive and anticipate problems so that when those challenges happen, you're not left playing musical chairs without a chair. There's a path forward regardless of how difficult or challenging or almost impossible the situation could be. And I think business owners who are more prepared for those tough times have an easier chance, like an easier path to get through those difficulties. So I call that resilience. The way that I define it is anticipating and being able to strengthen yourself and your business decisions through the times that are difficult and challenging. It can actually make you stronger and more capable of making good choices into the future rather than shutting your business down and walking away, which is an option too. But if you really want to continue moving that business forward, there are ways to do that in a more thoughtful, planned way rather than kind of reacting when the problems occur. So another good opportunity here is to build financial reserves. And most of the people I work with, or especially through this survey response, seem to already have that as a priority, whether it's not getting too far into debt or having a good way to have a payoff plan, choosing to be more cautious with investments, not taking as large of a risk when it comes to finances, that kind of thing. And then also to diversify the streams of revenue. And there are many creative ways to do that that may be a little bit outside of the comfort zone of some owners, especially for Gen X like me, or baby boomer generation owners, it sometimes can be difficult to transition into more creative and modern ways of doing business, but that can actually be a really great opportunity for the business to thrive as it continues through into the future. So there is so much potential volatility that can impact especially certain industries, but I would say every industry is at risk of some volatility affecting it, and some are changing much faster than others. Certainly the chance for that to happen is pretty high, and the opportunity to get ahead of it is also something that every single business owner can do. So here's a quote from a manufacturing business owner. We took on a new program involving unfamiliar material, equipment that we didn't yet own, and a process that we had never tried before. So someone that was sharing their perspective on how things are new, things are changing rapidly, and it takes a very strong person to adapt and choose to continue to move forward instead of refusing to acknowledge that that's happening. So the second risk behavior, or the challenge that affects risk, is workforce. And we mentioned this in the last video, that 55% of participants said that the biggest challenge when it comes to decision making is their workforce, including staffing, shortages, rising labor costs, and most likely the ability to retain good employees. It's just very difficult to expect that things will continue the way they are, and not have challenges ongoing with relationships and generations that you need to be able to rely on people to come to work on time and continue working through challenges. And this can be a very difficult conversation for owners who are expecting qualified workers who just do not live up to that expectation. So there is no silver bullet answer, but it is more of a thought process of how is your company culture communicating that need and also attracting the right kinds of employees to you. And also, do you have a process to cross-train, to optimize your current labor, to make sure that you're having a training process from more wise and older employees to the younger ones coming in? And then what are some ways to maybe use automation? It's not necessarily a sign of weakness to consider other options that your competitors have already put in place, like automation and alternative solutions, maybe outsourcing some of your services or staffing, bringing in some experts to help with certain areas, maybe reducing reliance on certain staff aspects in your company. Whatever it is that you're facing right now, there are ways to get through it. They just may not be as comfortable, or they may not be something that you've considered up to this point. But that definitely has been a concern for many of the owners that we surveyed. Then third is managing cash flow. 40% had this as a critical challenge when it comes to their decisions in their business, was how do they make sure that they have enough cash on hand? How can they keep their day-to-day operations flowing without disruption? And then what could they maybe delay as far as an investment for a critical piece of machinery or a critical purchase? And then how can that hinder growth? It really does have an impact on long-term projections if you can't keep cash on hand, and that can certainly have a very difficult and unfortunate outcome on a lot of other factors within your business. If you can't pay for payroll, that will certainly affect morale and etc. Just becomes a domino effect. So opportunities, there are opportunities to maybe consider some financial planning that takes into consideration these ebbs and flows. Maybe controlling expenses. It's not the only way, but there are certainly a lot of areas of waste in almost every single company that I work with. And certainly there are ways to cut back in times of tighter cash flow. And then again, diversifying the sources of revenue. Are there some additional ways that you could be providing services or products? There are certainly ideas for productizing services and servicizing products, looking for other opportunities to serve your base client needs in more creative ways, and that can create some revenue. There's so many different ideas for that, and it may just not have been the right time up to this point, but this could be an opportunity to increase your revenue through other means that were not previously explored. And then also, what are some ways that you can create stability in your decision making too? If you tend to be an owner who's more reactive and tends to use more intuition and gut feeling rather than data-driven decisions through looking at the actual financials for the last year or more, or if you aren't really certain about outside points of view, but now you're seeing that all of your competitors have brought in expertise and are starting to really restructure in a more modern way, this might be the time to consider that that is an option for your company. So here's another quote. We've raised prices multiple times to keep up with inflation and maintain profitability. That's from a retail shop owner. Okay, fourth area of risk behavior is the market competition. So much competition. So 36% of our respondents said that a challenge when it comes to making decisions is that other companies are doing it really well or better. So more than a third from established competitors and from new entrants. Sometimes that can actually be more of a challenge when you have a competitor that doesn't have maybe the structure that you have as a business owner who has been in business for many years, but they are more flexible and they can adapt more quickly to changes in the market, where a more established company has challenges with becoming as agile or adaptable because of the way that their company is structured. So these various types of competitors can actually draw your main business away, even some of your loyal clients. Loyalty is really not something that is as prized in this modern time when there are cheaper options, faster delivery, so many other factors that you may not be able to control. And if there has not been a way to measure what your core customers are prioritizing, then you may be missing an opportunity to make sure that you keep them and that they continue to want to do business with you. So one of the worst things that can happen to a business, in my experience, is to lose key customers without really knowing why or not having an opportunity to find that out before it's too late. It's such a heartbreaking thing to watch a company lose a third of its income from key competitors drawing away their top customers. And it's just a very difficult thing to come back from, because when you've been lulled into a false sense of security by assuming that you'll never lose your customers, and then overnight that changes, it's really difficult to replace them with new customers, because you have to work twice as hard to find the new customers to replace the revenue that they were bringing in. So the opportunity here is that there should be a constant focus on opportunities for innovation. It doesn't mean you have to change your business plan all the time, but there definitely should be some thought to what can we do to stay relevant? What do our customers use as a primary reason for wanting to do business with us? And what are the niche markets? So what are the specific ways that we are solving problems, really specific problems that no one else is really doing in our market or even cross market? I really like the idea of the niche focus. It's not necessarily that you have to only do one thing well and that's all you do. Obviously, a lot of companies, especially as they get large, they're doing a huge number of services or products. But there is a particular focus that you could prioritize and which could draw a lot of other business to you if you do it very well. So businesses that can position themselves for a competitive edge on their competitors are actually able to sustain that growth for long term. So here's another quote. We diversified our client base to avoid reliance on just one or two major clients, from a manufacturing owner. So this kind of correlates to the theme of, if you have an over-reliance on most of your income coming from one or two clients, that puts you at very high risk of potentially losing that when things change. Okay, the fifth one here, lack of time and resources. So 32%, about a third of survey participants said they just don't have the time to make good decisions. They don't have the resources. They don't know how to use these resources. Could be a number of things. But it's true, a lot of business owners are just so busy with the day-to-day tasks of putting out fires, managing huge problems, trying to bring in new business, maybe some growth opportunities, some collaborations, some strategic options, and then all of a sudden they just don't have time to evaluate whether those decisions are going to make sense for long-term or not. It can be overwhelming, and I certainly understand that you don't want just one more thing to do. I think the important thing is to consider that when you make quick decisions based on a reaction, it is more likely to result in heartbreak and unhappy final outcomes than a more thorough review of the business as a whole. And this is where, as I mentioned before, having an outside objective perspective on this from someone who can partner with you to look at these options is so much more helpful than expecting your employees or your staff to just provide that perspective, because it is human nature to focus on the things that are working for right now and to not rock the boat and really to not become uncomfortable. But as humans, we tend to focus on what makes us comfortable and to choose not to do anything that pushes us outside of that comfort zone. It's very rare for someone to want to become uncomfortable over and over. So your staff may be doing the best that they can with the situation that they have, and you also, of course, are doing the best that you can. And over time, the situation is changing, and yet the decisions that the staff are making and that you are making may have a different outcome over time because the situation is changing externally. Your competitors are choosing to add more technology, maybe your company is not. Your customers are looking for additional services, and maybe you just haven't thought of that because you've been so busy serving them right now. So over time, that becomes a problem, and it can result in really discouraging numbers as the years go by. So that's why it's not fun to put in place an innovation thought process. It's not fun to spend time on planning necessarily. It's not really fun to learn new data management tools and put different systems in place and maybe retro review all of your data. But it is more useful in giving you options to make decisions that will help your business succeed. And it will also position your business to be more sellable. So that is one key that I talk to a lot of owners about, that you can't sell a business unless the whole thing can be transferred to someone else. If you haven't really thought about how to transfer that to some other owner, you will probably face more challenges at the point where you want to leave the business. So that's another important thought process, that you may not think that you have the time or resources to evaluate this now. But I have definitely seen a lot of examples where owners get to a point where they want to sell as quickly as possible, but they have not spent the time for the past year or two setting their business up for that by evaluating what decisions they could be making to increase the valuation. Read this quote here: "We doubled our physical locations in just 18 months. It stretched our resources, but the opportunity to expand our market share was worth the effort," from an automotive business owner. So this is an example of someone who chose to expand and to look at the strategic way that, even though it was painful in the moment, he was able to look at how it would increase the valuation of the business and also the positioning in his market by having made choices that were difficult. And finally, the regulatory changes. 17% of people who responded to the survey talked about regulations as being a very big challenge when it comes to making decisions. So shifts in the regulations in their industry, especially in labor, taxes, environmental policies, maybe government changes that affect your particular industry, they can create a lot of frustration and confusion, and they can make your decisions more complex because you can't necessarily rely on old ways of doing it now that you have additional regulatory restrictions. So the opportunity here is that if you stay ahead of these things and certainly have several of your key employees or leaders responding to these changes and updating the rest of the people who are involved, you can make decisions and plan ahead based on these changes before they become a problem. So you can proactively adjust your internal operations and maybe the long-term strategies of how you're going to face those, and just integrate that within the decisions that you're already making, rather than hearing about it at the last second and then you have to make enormous changes and it can impact your business for many weeks or months as a result of a short-term reaction. So those are the 6 different ways that risks can affect decisions. And the next thing that we'll be looking at is gender-based patterns that we found from the survey. So again, if you want to check out the entire report, it is at laconteconsulting.com/ohio-survey. And again, I'm Grace LaConte. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions or comments about this report. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you'll get informed of future videos, and really appreciate you checking out this video.